Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be interviewing an amazing lady called Janice Minihan who helped me purchase and secure my first property, which included a £20,000 council loan that's interest-free for 10 years to refurbish the property. I'm going to be interviewing her and her experience and how she started in sourcing and how it's really helped her accelerate and grow her business and working with investors to help them secure their first property or secure their next property. If that's something you're interested in or learning about property sourcing or anything to do with working with sources, please hit that subscribe button, and I'll be going over the next few weeks talking about property sourcing, interviewing other property sources, which I'm super excited about. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Radhika. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining this first interview. I'm super excited. And I wanted to start off with you because you helped me through my first property. I know we were in conversations and you were working with Manel, who's my business partner / aunt as well. And so I thought it'd be a great idea to start off with you because I know you've had so many years of successes in property and going into property sourcing. So I'd love for you to give like a slight introduction or small introduction of who you are and how you came into property sourcing.
Yeah, sure. So for anyone that doesn't know, but I'm an Aussie that moved to the UK nearly 7 years ago. Can't believe it, time flies, and wanted to get onto the property ladder in the UK. So when I got training and was out there just following my training, putting my 40 offers out, and eventually had more than one offer get accepted. And obviously I didn't want to let agents down. So that's essentially how I fell into sourcing and just sourced through my network and people looking for similar deals. Used to be a primary school teacher, so wanted a career change, wasn't sure what. And then was an investor in Australia anyway. So I've always loved property, but just went and honed my skills and learnt the UK property market, which has led me into sourcing. Wasn't ever something I anticipated doing. But from that, I've done all sorts of things, including lettings and refurb for other investors and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so you don't just source the deal, you essentially package it, get the refurb quotes in, use a team of builders, and then essentially do the letting. Well, you used to doing the letting side.
Yeah, exactly. And it was born out of when I initially started sourcing, none of my clients were local. So they all needed my expertise, I guess, and team to bring their projects from just buying it to right through to being able to be rented. So out-developed a turnkey solution for investors where they had peace of mind that they could get their projects turned around by a decent team, because there's lots of interesting characters out there in the building world, isn't there, as we know. And yeah, it just grew from there. So here I am, 5 years later, still doing it.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, how long have you been in the UK, investing in the UK and then transitioning to property sourcing? Did you go straight into property sourcing while you were doing your first deal, or was it a later transition?
No, so I started my training in 2015, and I did it at the start of 2015, and I didn't get my first deal through until the end. And I'm pretty spontaneous, but so this one took forever, it felt. And then so I got my first run on the board, and then I got my next one accepted. So it probably wasn't until sort of 2017 that I actually got into sourcing, and I had built like a pipeline and just build those relationships with agents and my local power team and all of that kind of stuff, which takes time, but it can be frustrating when you get started. And then wanting to leave teaching, deal sourcing was a good way to replace my income as I discovered what it was about.
Yeah, it's funny how things happen when you don't even mean to discover it, but it all works out in its favor. But it's quite interesting that you said that it takes a lot of time and frustration at the start. How long did it take for you to, because I know this is a lot of frustrations, and this is where people stop investing or using property sourcing as a business to essentially give up. So how long did it take for you to build that pipeline of properties, investors, getting the build team? I know that was a kind of full-on question, but there's a lot to dive in there.
Yeah, there is. So initially it was just to get started for myself as an investor. So I think that took about 18 months to get my first 2 properties, and then I had surplus accepted through using a property coach and all the rest of it. But in all honesty, I think the relationship side of it took me the first couple of years to actually feel confident enough to take on an investor's project. It's okay. Well, for me, it's okay when it's my own. If it goes wrong, I'll deal with it. But when you're responsible for somebody else's project, and it's not as though it's 5 or 10 quid, is it? It's a significant sum of money. So I wanted to be sure I had the right people in place to be able to help me produce a good product for my investors going forward. So the whole relationship building is something that I think is understated and undervalued, and people new to sourcing think they can do a 3-day course and they'll be out there making thousands in the next week. And it's not. In reality, I don't think it's like that at all. I think it takes time to build relationships. That's always ongoing. It takes time to find good deals. And if you find good deals and you have a good network, then you should be able to sell them. If you but it all comes back to relationships. That's the be all and end all of any business. And so I think I've been at this now 4 years, and I still learn every single day from every transaction, every type of deal, through analyzing, doing my numbers. And things have changed, obviously, through COVID. The cost of a refurb's increased, the cost of materials, all of that kind of stuff. So it's forever a work in progress to do it well and to tweak and change as you grow.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
part of it?
Yeah, it does, because I think there's so many key things that you mentioned in there, especially from the learning aspect as well, because like you mentioned, you can't just go on a 3-day course and just expect to know everything, because you've learned so many different things through the experience and going through the transaction. Not every deal is going to be the best, and not every deal is going to go like smoothly. So it's just learning through those, how to make the next property better, and then the one after that better. And then in terms of investors, when you approach, say for example, you had a deal that you approach your investors with, how long did it take to build that trust with them? And I know that's not a silver bullet answer, but how long did it take, and what did it take for them to trust you with this project?
I think the networking for me, even though I'm not a natural networker and I don't really enjoy it, but I knew it was important. So I put myself out there. I went through those uncomfortable periods of going to networking events, and through the training organization I went through, made an effort to get to know people in there. I was very active in their Facebook group. And that Facebook group, I think, was crucial to my success as a sourcer, because anyone looking for my area, when they searched for people in this area, I always came up. So that built my business. And then when I had these great deals, because my area is a great little area and it still is, I could go to them and say, look, and if it wasn't something I would ever do, then I would never offer it to an investor as well. So I think they knew that what I say was what I mean. And if I wouldn't do it, then I wouldn't offer it out. So you had to package it all up, be confident in your numbers, and then you can deliver it on time.
Do you think having a property in that area and you having a product to essentially show you've got the figures, you've got the rental, etc., you've essentially got a case study, do you think that helps you when it comes to working with investors, saying, look, this is the project that I've done, here's the numbers for this is my risk that I've taken, this is, it's not guaranteed, but this is essentially what we could do for you? Do you think that helps you?
Absolutely. And I think, I don't know that I could have done sourcing without having my own properties. I don't know that I'd be that confident to say, here's a property, this is what it's going to, you can do comparables and all the rest of it, but I think experience is different, isn't it? And when you've walked the path and you've got actual concrete figures and you've been through your own trials and tribulations with doing a property, and they're all old and damp, aren't they? And you've got to bring them through, and just the experience of the little intricacies of different projects, I think really helps. And I think that's been my key to success as well, being an investor. I'm not just a sourcer, I'm both. And that's really played an important role with building my network and having people come back time and time again.
Exactly. Once you've done the one project, then as long as they're happy with that one project, then they should be coming back, as long as they have the investment and want to continue in that area, which is great, because essentially you offer a hands-off solution, which is perfect for an investor that doesn't live in your area or wants to have the passive lifestyle of properties. One thing that you mentioned earlier is kind of going through the refurb and project managing. How did you
build the confidence? Because when it comes to refurbs, I have no clue. If I go to a property, I have no clue what I'm looking for. How did you build your confidence to say, okay, this is going to cost this much, or the estimates, or do you just rely on the builders that you have?
No, so again, initially I took as much information from my network and people around me that were already doing projects and trying to find out what something would cost here, because obviously having an Australian background, I knew, and doing projects in Australia, I sort of knew what that was cost-wise.
Yeah.
But then things were a little bit different here. Same, but different. So I needed to get accurate costs in the first place. So I used my network to help me out with that where I could. Ask a builder in the early stages to come around and help you try and build that relationship with the build team, and costs wise, even if it's just an estimate, it'll give you an idea. But then actually doing my own project before I ever sourced to get proper numbers and cement it all down, and then have a contingency, because no property ever goes according to plan, and your contingency is crucial, I think, in getting it over the line. So all of that put together means I'm still here today, and I haven't given up, even though sourcing isn't easy. It's good when you're on a roll and you build your relationships and build your deals and your pipeline and all that kind of stuff, but it's not for the faint-hearted.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I can definitely agree. It's definitely not something for me right now. Maybe one day, but not right now. How has COVID, I know it's the conversation that's always going to come up, but how has COVID impacted sourcing? Because I've seen people right now, everyone's looking for deals, but there aren't any good deals. How has that impacted from the initial start of lockdown compared to where we are now?
I feel like I had almost like 2020 off. So 2020 was my year to regroup, as it turned out, set my mentoring and education programs in place for our business. But because sourcing died, the property market was closed down. There was no, my focus was keeping my tenants happy in my current properties. And then I feel like I've restarted this year, and I've got my pipeline back going, and I've got mentees that want to build a sourcing business, so they've got their pipelines going, and it's about being different. Whereas before, I never really did direct to vendor. Agents were perfectly fine. They knew what I did, and we had a good little relationship going. But then now the market's gone crazy since the stamp duty holiday and all of that kind of stuff, that I've had to be creative, had to go direct to vendor. And so now we've got some exciting deals coming that are in the pipeline that I think will come through. But that's taken me, the best part of 6 months to get going again. Just getting back out there.
So you said that you used to work with estate agents, but now you've gone direct to vendor. Are you still getting properties through agents? What are your methods at the moment of getting those deals?
I still do viewings through the agents. My offers are nowhere near what they've got for asking prices. So they know, they just giggle at me. And some of them I don't even put in. I have it all worked out, and I have it in my system. And so when I see them come back on the market because they've fallen out of bed, then I'll ring them and I say, I am here. This is my offer. And I might give it at that point. But if I'm 30, 40, 50 grand away at the moment, I'm just not putting it in. I've got more success through direct to vendor with somebody who A, doesn't want to deal with an agent, B, are in strife because of the condition of their property and maybe what they owe on their mortgage. And it's actually finding that win-win for them, which is actually bringing me some good little deals for my investor, but solving the owner's problem at the same time.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear, because then at least you're creating that win-win. You're still kind of offering what you think is the right price that you would pay for an investor, as an investor, but then at the same time, you still want to create that win-win solution. So even showing that you're interested in the property, and the agents understanding that if it falls through, then you'll be there to pick it up, even if the first offer doesn't get accepted. I think that's a great way to show that no matter what, you're going to do everything to secure the property. And 9 out of 10 times it probably might go through, but then that one time it doesn't go through, they'll just come to you first, and that's a quick solution because they know you're ready, and they know you've got investors who work with you time and time again.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And we've got some deals going through now that are with an agent or with agents, and one in particular, 2 first-time buyers gave asking, our offer was about 15,000, I think, off asking.
Mm.
So they're like, no, they don't entertain you, do they really? But then it fell over once. It came back on. We re-offered at what our price was. No, sold it again at asking to first-time buyers. It came back on for the third time, and then and this was a new agent, so we had to prove that relationship to them that we could complete on it. And the owner has accepted our offer. Still going through conveyancing, which is so slow on its own, but equally it's an amazing little deal for an investor. It'll be a great HMO when it's finished. So it's just being persistent and showing up and ringing them every month, even if I would say always offer, but if it is really cringeworthy, then I sometimes hold back and I'll wait till they come back on the market. But I'll follow it up and just see what the status is every month to see if it's still in conveyancing or not. You just never know.
And how do you do your follow-up system? Do you use a CRM system? Do you have a folder? How do you keep track of all the properties you're going through?
So I use an app called My Property App, which is not an app, it's an online, it's just a website, but it keeps everything like a CRM for properties, really. And every month we just go back in and give the agents a call or shoot them an email and just see what the latest is, and then you can update it so it's offer accepted, under offer, sold. Once it's off Rightmove or we can't see it anymore, we just archive it and keep our database fresh, so we're not bothering people for nothing.
Yeah, definitely. It's a waste of time as well for you guys. If someone's just bought the house and it's a family and they're ready to settle in, and you go, hi, I want to buy your house.
Exactly.
So very different. What would you say? I'm going to ask you two questions. They go coincide with each other. What is the best deal that you've done? And then what is the hardest deal that you've done?
So the best deal would be the ones probably when you first started, Medica. Bought it for 37,000, I think. Feels like ages ago.
Yeah.
37,000, done at value of 60, and used a council loan of 20 grand interest free. So for 10 years, turned it around, and there's a HMO, and it brings me like 1,300 a month in rent. So just as a little mini mo. So that's my best, and ended up being a carbon copy for quite a long time. Yeah, but they work, and they still work. So they're great little deals, harder to find now in this market, but still the numbers work. Most difficult, probably for me, like just wrapping my head around mixed use. It's just stepping into that next level, like mixed use or commercial, knowing there's something there that you can do with it, but not entirely sure what. So that's probably been my biggest learning curve in the last couple of years. But then finding a lender that will lend on something in an area that's not known for those kind of buildings. So a big commercial or a mixed use building where it's not so common. A lot of lenders over the years have rolled their eyes at me, or surveyors have, when I do the surveys, because they don't believe the figures that I get. But it's like, they're actual. I'm not lying. They're true.
I've got the agreements here.
Exactly. It's that. So I think it's a learning curve on lenders' parts as well, because now, fast forward a few years, this place is recognised for its HMOs and all the rest of it. So yeah, there's always something to learn. Every day is a school day.
Yeah, every day is a school day. It's true though, because when you're open to learning as well, it's so much more valuable than just saying, hey, this is the only process. You have to learn through every single process, and knowing that you're never going to be perfect at it, but you're getting better and better and better, not making the same mistakes or it being a costly mistake, because property is not the cheapest of investments. Like, it's still a considerable amount for people. So yeah, just pointing them in the right direction and building your portfolio through that, it's just great to hear that you're still learning. In terms of the council loan, because I get asked this all the time and I never know how to answer this, but what is the council loan? How did you first come about it? And how has it helped your investors to refurb their properties? So
the council loan in my area, how did I learn about it? I think I I went to a council event for landlords because I wanted to be, in our area, we have like an accreditation scheme, gold. At the time, there was like a dozen or maybe 20 gold standard landlords in the whole borough, which I thought was ridiculous. Like, how can that be when it's a rental town anyway? So my very first property that I made into a HMO, I called in the HMO officer because I wanted to build that council relationship. And then I think I went to a training that they were having at town hall, and they mentioned these council loans, and it's like, oh, right. So just going into that process and working out where they were, meeting people in the right teams that make that happen. We've just built a nice relationship. They know we do high quality projects, and it's gone on from there really, because their aim is to bring empty homes back into use. My aim is to not only build my portfolio, but my investors' portfolio. And essentially it's an interest-free loan for 10 years. So it's like angel money, isn't it, in a sense? That it's a no-brainer. So I just reckon, I've looked at other boroughs around us that have, there is one or two councils that do a similar thing, but it's just not as good as what we do here. And they offer incentives because they want these houses back into use, so they just become dilapidated year on year, don't they? So it's a win for all.
And if someone is looking to work with a property sourcer, what things should they look out for when starting a new relationship with someone? So there's basic things that, you know, a property sourcer has to go through. What are like the top things that someone should look out for?
So they should be regulated at the very least. Like, there's quite a few people out there now trying to clean up the property market because there's no real regulation. But if you're a sourcer, you should be regulated with the ICO for data protection, anti-money laundering, be part of the NRLA, professional indemnity insurance, all these little things. And people go on training courses and get told it's a couple of £1,000 to get registered with all these bodies, but it's not. You can do it for under 1,000, and it just takes, well, they're not even hard to sign up to. The anti-money laundering will take the longest at a few hours, but I think that puts a lot of people off, or they operate illegally. They go and do their training course, they go and source properties, and they don't bother getting registered. So we only work with regulated deal sources in the first instance. And then little things like, well, I say little things, but having a client account to keep money separate to your normal day-to-day trading account. And not many people ask for it, but it's important, I think, because you're dealing with other people's money, client money, protect insurance, all of that kind of stuff, that you need to keep it separate. But really, it's not onerous. And if you're going to want to make a business out of it, you do just need to get regulated. So, yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I've seen quite a few people, I've spoken to a few property sources who are not compliant or not registered with certain bodies, and it is a little bit off-putting, because I'd rather someone invest their time and invest their money to go through the right processes, because that's what I know they're going to do with my property. And I think that's such a big differentiator with someone who's actually gone and bothered to do something about their business than someone who's been a bit lazy and doesn't want to pay for that. So it does make a big difference. And one thing that you are doing now, so before you were staying in your area, how important is it for you to stay in your area, and how much has it helped you being an in-person deal sourcer within your area?
You need to become an area expert. Like, if you're not on the ground, I don't know how you do it. Like, I'm in the process of training people up to help me do what I do, so we can look after all of our clients really well. But I don't think you could do it online. And you can't build relationships purely online, as talented as we are. But it just takes time, and to know what's a good street to not a good street, to one end of the street's better than the other end of the street. You don't get that unless you're out there pounding the streets. And if you're a sourcer anyway, then you'll know your area inside out. And I've thought for years, I'm going to widen my area and go, Greater Manchester, say. But I haven't, because I know my area inside out. There's still deals to be had, and I've got good relationships, and I'd have to start from scratch if I went somewhere else.
Yeah.
So. it works.
And that's one thing that I wanted to move on to is how, essentially, why do investors work with you? Because I can give you my answer, but I'm sure you will. Great. Great. One thing I can answer for myself is, why do people work with property sources? Like, why do you have clients coming to you again and again? And why do they choose to work with you in the first instance?
I think it's because, well, reputation for me. If I was looking for a source, I'd be looking at their track record. I'd be looking at their deal examples that they've done before, regulation, all the rest of it, getting to know them. A lot of my work now is recommendations from other investors, and I've had to close my books just to look after the ones currently on them, because, like I said before, what I say I do, and I never want to let anybody down. So if I'm offering to source somebody a deal, and I know a lot of people go and find deals and then try and find a investor to buy it, whereas I work in reverse. I'd rather find now. I think back in the early days, I was like that, but now for my personality, I like to have my clients. I like to find out exactly what they're looking for, and then I'll go on bespoke source. And so that's how I've sort of restarted 2021. And I think it's more in sync with what I do. It's more in sync with my investors and what they need now. And if they're realistic and I'm realistic, then it works. I just can't, if I don't feel I can provide them what they're looking for, say a money in, money out deal, then I just won't take it on. And I think it's being true to yourself and your investors, and there's no mucking around then, is there? Everyone knows where they're standing.
Is very key. If you can help them, not just like taking their money, but just saying, look, I can't actually help you. I'd rather someone say that to me than take my money and then give me a deal that I'm not looking for, even if it's still a great deal. But if I'm not looking for that, then it doesn't really work, and then you start to lose that trust with that person. I think transparency is very key, if you can help them or not, because you're not going to be able to help everyone, let's be honest, but there are people you can help. And then fast forwarding now onto kind of 4 years later, 5 years later, I don't even know how long it is. Where are you now? Because I know you've got different things going on. So sourcing is one part of your business. What other things have you done with your experience, and what other things have you launched?
So, well, I've got my property portfolio now, and I self-manage it because I think no one does a better job than me. And it's about relationships as well, looking after my tenants if something goes wrong, that it's dealt with at the time. So I've got that, so that's nice. I've got property deal stores growing all the time. I've got mentees and I've got direct sourcing clients, and I can help them one-on-one. So I just, like I said, take on what I can take on, close my books until I've sorted them, and then open them again when it's ready for new people. But as we grow, so does our team. So like, I've got a relationship manager now for Property Deal Store who's amazing, who can connect with lots of investors. So as other sources bring their deals to us that are regulated, we can go out to our investor database and say, look, we've got this. And as she gets to know more and more investors, then it's just going really nicely, and I'm really happy with it. So I'm excited about what the future holds for us. And then my thing is, I want to help and empower women in property, but just people getting started. So they might have built a little pot, not really know where to start with it, and they come to us for some guidance. So unfortunately, in the early days, I did use a couple of sources. I did lose my money, and regulation wasn't actually a thing back then. So I think it's important to do due diligence on anyone you work with.
Yeah, definitely.
Referrals are best.
Yeah. And what is Property Deal Store? Because I think that's such an interesting concept that I'm just going to let you take over that because I think it's so interesting of what you've done and how you're working with other people.
So it's funny because Property Deal Store was born out of what I was talking about at the start, having too many deals come in as just a little investor getting started, and not wanting to let agents down. And my business partners and I, when we're like, who can I source this to? I've got my network that I could ring up and go, hey, my friends, are you looking for a deal? But what if none of them are looking for deals? Who do I go to? And I don't want to lose face with an agent. So we realized there was a niche there that wasn't really being catered for. if you have deals but you didn't have a database, you lose it. If you have a database but you don't have any deals, what's the point? So we thought, well, let's bridge the gap. Let's connect buyers and sellers and make a deal sourcing platform. And I'm, as an ex-teacher, I'm really keen to help people and I really want to get them started. So we've brought in the training element to it as well, which has been exciting. And just dedicating some time to growing it, because I think there's a big market out there for really good quality, not only investors, but good quality sources. And we're just the conduit in the middle that connects them all up.
Yeah, I think the platform itself is so good because you can filter through, you can pick certain properties, you can see the ones that are already under offer, so you can see the examples that you've done, which is quite cool. And then you get to network with other property sources who, and basically widen your stance. So even though you're focusing on one particular area, you've got sources everywhere in the country, so you technically are going everywhere without having to be there and be the area expert.
And it's a bit like I guess an agent, isn't it? Agent's website, a shop front, but purely online. Our investors are all over the country, more and more becoming international, looking to the UK to invest in property, and they're finding us through referrals. And just being true to people, just helping people on their journey, with no ulterior motive. So if a deal works for them, fantastic. But equally, we're not going to ram it down somebody's throat if it doesn't. Doesn't work for them, it doesn't work for them. So it's about being open and honest. And I think that is our success. And it's exciting to see where we're going to keep moving from here.
Amazing. And I just wanted to go back to two questions I had, which I think are super important. How do you know an investor is not wasting your time? And then secondly, how do you know they're not going to steal your deal? If it's direct to vendor or with an estate agent, they just go offer a little bit more because of the sourcing fee that's applied?
Good question. So the first one, can you just repeat your first question?
How do you know an investor is not going to waste your time? So I come up to you saying I'm very interested, give you the deposit, and then just that's it.
So, well, initially, like part of our systems are we don't give out any quantifying details to anyone. They have to sign a non-disclosure agreement, an NDA anyway, to find out. And they'll never get the full address anyway. It'll be an area around the actual property to protect that sourcer, because you don't want tire kickers, and B, the sourcer, if they've done their job, they've spent a lot of time and effort getting that deal. So we need to look after them as well. So once we go through that NDA process, if they're still interested, we ask for £1,000 refundable reservation fee. And that sort of will either cut out somebody who's not interested, or if they're really interested, it's not big in the greater scheme of things in property. Yeah. And it's our reputation on the line. So they know that they're not going to lose it. It is fully refundable and all of that. And it just allows us to go through the due diligence process with them, do viewings and all of that for someone that's serious. And then once they take it on, you have to do all your anti-money laundering checks and ID and all that kind of stuff anyway. So there's a process there from start to finish. And then for a sourcer not having their deal stolen from them, well, there's checks that we could do, that we do. If somebody was to load a deal on our platform, we check it on the back end that it's not a live deal on Rightmove or Zoopla or somewhere like that, because it should be off market to come to us. And then we've never had this happen, but it is part of our system that if a deal didn't pan out and we could land registry that deal in 3 months, 6 months to see who the new owner is. And if it was through a direct introduction to us, because we've got all the paperwork signed up front anyway, essentially the source is entitled to that commission, and you could go down the small money claims online or whatever it's called. So that's how we protect our sources and deal with investors who are ready to buy.
Perfect. Well, yeah, as long as those systems are put in place first, and that you're going through the process and spending time reviewing that process so nothing happens. If anything happens, well, the likelihood of it happening is probably very small, but if it does happen, you're protected anyway. That's so important. And then one kind of question about working with deal sources is, how do you essentially, what do you check when you are working with someone, with a property investor like myself? What do you check? So once you pay that £1,000 £1,000 refundable deposit into the client account, what checks do you do? Is that normal for a property sourcer to be doing all those checks?
A property sourcer should always be checking, if they've got an investor, they should always be checking proof of address, proof of funds, an ID, and then have it in their client account. It should never be used, in my opinion, until the property completes, because things happen, unfortunately, and deals do fall out of bed. You try to mitigate against it, but this is the UK and this is the system. So by keeping it separate, the money's over there elsewhere, isn't it? But essentially there's a bit of a commitment from both sides to produce the end result. So we do those checks right up front when a deal is reserved, and happy to proceed. And it's the relationship, we keep in touch with them every week. And I think every good sourcer should do that with their clients, keep in touch. If they're direct to vendor and if they've got an investor, at least a phone call or an email to each every week, just to monitor the process. And then if there's an agent involved, then that as well. So you keep it moving, otherwise things get stale and people do move on. So
I think it's nice though that you're going through the process, and sometimes time gets the better of them, especially if you're kind of taking on most of the work as well as your package offer. But essentially sometimes people miss things, and I definitely did. I had no idea what I was doing when I was buying the first property, but it was really nice that people check in and making sure that you're on track and you're chasing your solicitors. So many things get missed, and if it's just with the solicitors, you might not necessarily know to check them. So I think it's quite a nice approach to just making sure everything's on track, and just if they need any like help or anything, you're just there. And I think that makes a big difference. And then
I think for a new sourcer as well, having someone like us, like we take that process on. So if we source their deal, we manage that weekly contact with all parties, including them. And we have the database, so they bring the deal and we provide the other half, which is the database and the follow-up. But it's good for them, I think, to learn as well. So they're not doing it all on their own, but they can see what we do and they can implement that into their own system. So one day when they've got their own database, they may not need Property Deal Store, because I'd like to think they might, but they might have their own that they go and use, and they've got their own systems and processes that would probably be similar to what they've experienced, because they've developed them out of that.
Amazing. And what's your plans for the next 12 months? I know you said you're working with new investors, you're going through the mentorship program, and then you've got Property Deal Store. What are you kind of focused on over the next 12 months?
For me, it's growing our brand, helping people get started on their property journey, whether that be through deal sourcing or through education, but just walking the walk and talking the talk, and not probably can't say that I can, but not just being true, being honest. And I think naturally things grow. So I've sort of taken this 12 months out of investing myself to focus on this side of business, because there's so much to go at in property and I want to do it all the time. So, but I thought, no, I'm going to focus on my investors. I'm going to focus on Property Deal Store and grow our brand, grow our education side of it, and source quality deals. And I think I've got a great team. We can work virtually, apart from being on the ground. If you're a sourcer, everything else can sort of be done online. So lots of great stuff happening.
Amazing. And if anyone is interested in working with you or going through as a new investor or going through property deal sourcing, how do they find you?
So propertydealstore.co.uk, or a direct email would be just to inquiries@propertydealstore.co.uk, and we'll bring you straight through to Nikki, who's our relationship manager, and she loves having a chat to people.
Perfect. I will put that link below so it's easier for people. They can just click directly onto that. So I'll definitely put your socials on there and how to get in contact with you. One last question. When you first started, what's your biggest tip to anyone that is starting? And I don't know if that was a mouthful of a question, but essentially, what was your tips for when you first started to where you are now for anyone who's new and starting?
Talk to people. From agents, I was terrified of talking to agents right at the beginning, whereas they were mega helpful, and they helped me with great area research. They talk to agents, talk to everyone, go and network with like-minded people. I joined the local business networking group through begging my friend to take me 1 week, not really knowing what I offered, but at the same time built some great connections. There's trades and everything in those groups, and so I've built my power team, a lot of it out of those networking groups. So even though if they had nothing property wise for me, it helped doing refurbs because I could always have somebody to tap into. And yeah, just talk to people. That's what it's about. It's a people business after all. Houses are just the product.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for this interview. I'm super excited that you answered so many questions in like such great depth, and hopefully this will help a lot of people. And if they are interested in working with you, they can directly get in contact with you. But do you have any last comments before we wrap up?
No, just thank you. I'm very touched that I'm your first interview, Radhika. That's lovely. And I wish you all like success, because I see you're doing great things on socials, and obviously I've worked with you before. So it's good to see clients build their portfolio along the way as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Honestly, I appreciate it.